let's now kickstart the Money Show and bring on board our very first guest. We have with us Hemant Rustagi of WiseInvest Advisors. Hemant, many thanks for joining us today on ET Now. And season's greetings to you in advance. I hope, of course, the year 2021 is a better one for all of us, for you, for your family, than 2020 was. Okay, well, let's start off by talking about the topic at hand, and that is the fact that the kind of year that it was, first the health crisis, which escalated to an economic crisis, subsequently, of course, job losses, disruptions to business, disruptions to income, all of that has really played havoc on whatever we may have had planned from a money perspective, from a goal perspective for 2020. And this is something that's not really setting a great tone for 2021. So just as we are wrapping up this year and we're going to enter a new one, tell us about how should one essentially plan for the new year, the first few steps that one should take given all that we've seen in 2020?
Well, Mubina, I would say that the financial planning per se is very, very important for investors because it allows them to actually keep their investment on track during their defined time horizon. Another important aspect that one has to really look at on an annual basis is review the portfolio in totality. Now, while we keep looking at our portfolio every now and then, but it's very important that we look at portfolio, a detailed analysis of the portfolio once a year. Now, while there is no significance of doing that at the start of a new calendar year, but if you follow that every year, it brings in discipline into this process of re-looking at your portfolio. You won't miss out doing this in any year. And another important thing from the investor point of view is that if you do it after a gap of 12 months, you make this whole exercise tax efficient one, because especially if you look at from the point of view of equity or equity-oriented hybrid funds, for the taxation purpose, they become you convert short-term gains into long-term capital gain. Another important thing that I would like everyone to look at, at the start of the new year, is their insurance portfolio. Now, there are quite a few factors that one has to look at. The common mistake which is made is, one, having a number of policies, following a strategy where you buy a product which are investment come insurance product, where insurance is just incidental. So neither you get the kind of risk cover you should be getting, nor the kind of return that you expect from a long-term portfolio. Then it's very, very important to buy the right product. So when you analyze your insurance portfolio, you need to look at, one, that it's not the number of policies which matter to you. It should be the quantum of risk cover that you have. So buy the right product, relook at what products you have, realign whatever products you have in the portfolio. For life insurance, look at term plan because they're cheaper. Plus you get the kind of cover you should get. And it also allows you to look at better option in terms of investment. Even in terms of health insurance, it's important to ensure that you have the right quantum of risk cover and also the right product. Now, for example, if it's a small family, very young family, you should look at a family floater plan. For seniors in the family, you should look at maybe individual plans. Look at your insurance portfolio. For those investors who have been following their financial plan or investment process very regularly, they should keep doing that even in 2021 and keep their asset allocation relevant. For those investors, I would recommend very important thing is to relook at their equity portfolio, because make sure that your allocation to 3 different segments of the market, that's large cap, mid cap, small cap, is ideal. What is the ideal number? I would say that for someone who is a long-term investor, around 60% should be in large cap, and the remaining can be in mid and small, and significant part of that should be in mid. So if one has been a little conservative on exposure to these 2 segments, looking at the potential that these 2 segments have going forward in the next couple of years, my recommendation would be to maybe enhance your exposure to these 2 segments. Now let's talk about investors who are making investment, but actually don't have an investment plan in place. Now the problem over there is that you create a pool of investment, and because you create a pool, you don't do ideal asset allocation. You don't know for which investment is for which purpose. So my recommendation would be that at the start of the year, relook at your entire portfolio, define your goals, assign a time horizon, and align these investments to these goals, which will ensure that you have the right kind of asset allocation. And that asset allocation will ensure that you get the kind of return you should be getting for each of your goals. And the last but not the least is for those investors who till now have been investing only in traditional options like bank deposits or bonds, small saving schemes, I would say that they need to relook at their investment philosophy, investment strategy, and start looking at market-linked product offered by mutual funds. Now, I'm not saying that you straight away go into equity fund, but gradually start including market-linked products in your portfolio so that you can give yourself a chance to earn a positive real rate of return over a period of time. So I think these are the few things that investors should be looking at, but depending on their own personal situation and what stage of portfolio building they are.
Now, Hemant, I think a very important thing for all of us to understand is the kind of lessons that 2020 taught us from a personal finance perspective, from a holistic personal finance perspective. If you could summarize that for us, and how do you think we should implement all of these lessons in 2021?
Well, Bobina, I would say, as you rightly mentioned, 2020 has been quite an eventful year. Okay, the year started off very well. The markets were looking good. The market was becoming broad-based. Then COVID-19 came, and then what happened? We saw a sharp fall in the market around almost 50%. And then as the economy opened up, and also because of the global liquidity and the improved performance of corporate, we are seeing some of the indices touching new highs. So clearly, like I said, it's been quite an eventful year. But there are quite a few lessons for investors here. I think the first and foremost, I would say that stick to your asset allocation, irrespective of the level of volatility in the short term. Now, what we saw that the market corrected almost 50%, and we are now at new high. So clearly, you need to stick to your asset allocation. If you don't do that, you will end up making decisions in panic, which will mean that you will distort your asset allocation, which means that you will move your money from equity into debt, and then you would have actually missed out this rally. So this is something that has to be done. Third important thing, as I mentioned again, from the portfolio point of view, is ensure that when you're investing in equity, that you have an exposure to all three segments of the market. What we saw in the last couple of years, that mid cap and small caps were not doing very well. So we saw investors investing significant part of their portfolio in large cap. Now, large cap also have done well, but going forward, as I mentioned earlier, we expect these two segments to do well. It becomes very difficult unless and until, like I said, that you do a complete analysis of your portfolio to kind of keep looking at making changes in the portfolio. And last but not the least, I think it's very important for every investor to understand that it's very difficult to predict market in the short term. So never try to do that. Even experts can't do it. Stay invested. And I think that is something which is good for you. So this is on the investment side. And as I mentioned already, that you have to have adequate insurance cover because this was a health scare for everyone. And this is the lesson that all of us need to learn, that if you don't have an health insurance, adequate cover and through the right product, it can actually create a lot of financial pressure on you. So I think these are the factors that people should keep in mind.
Oh yeah, I think the point of having an insurance product was really driven through via this health crisis that we've been in the midst of. And like you mentioned, not having adequate cover and the right product can really put immense pressure on your financials. I think many people, unfortunately, have had to learn that the hard way. So yes, that's definitely one lesson that I'm sure many people will carry with them for the new year. Mr. Rustagi, high debt, low credit score, depleted emergency savings. I think this has been the profile of a lot of individuals as we are sort of coming out of this crisis. I mean, to a certain extent, there is normalcy creeping into a lot of our lives. How do you suggest individuals revive all of this, bring it back on track in 2021?
Well, I think I totally agree with you. Look, I mean, there were two sets of investors. Those who had created an emergency fund for any kind of financial exigency, they were in a much better position to handle the financial stress that most people faced. But then there were also on the other side people who did not plan for this kind of financial emergency. They found it difficult. And of course, what typically happened was that even those who were secure in their job were worried that what will happen. So obviously, they kind of discontinued their investment. But broadly, they were still able to handle the situation much better. Now, obviously, what has happened for people who did not have an emergency fund, they have stopped their investment, started using money which was meant for long-term investment, started using now. what they should be doing now is that look at their personal situation, as you rightly mentioned, that things are getting better. Okay, people who did not get increments are getting it now. The companies have realized that they kind of make sure that their employees are happy and are in good state of mind and financially also secure. And also we are seeing overall economy is improving. The level of employment is also becoming better. So clearly, as your finances improve, there are two aspects that people need to look at clearly. One is to create an emergency fund if you don't have one earlier. And if you had one, that would have got depleted, to make sure that you kind of again start contributing towards that and make sure that you have this adequate emergency fund. I think that has to be the priority. The second is, the moratorium ensured that not many people had to worry about their credit score, but it does not mean that they should not plan for repaying that in an orderly fashion. So I would say that as the finances improve going forward, that is another area they need to focus on, because let's not forget that if there is an impact on your credit score, it will affect you a lot in future, especially when you want to borrow money for buying a house or education loan or anything else. So I think these are two factors that everyone should be focusing on.
Okay, excellent. Mr. Rustagi, let's also talk about the fact that a lot of our financial goals, in many ways, many of us may be considering retiring, maybe not in 2020, but in the next 1 or 2 years. Many were considering an education abroad for their kids, a marriage, so on. Marriage, of course, may have happened, but in fact, many people may have saved money on the marriage, so maybe you can scratch marriage as an example. But whatever their financial goals, buying a house, buying a car, all of that may have been derailed for obvious reasons. Now the question is, how do you sort of bring them back on track in 2021? I know you spoke a lot about reviewing your investments, ensuring that your portfolio is a proper one, but how do you sort of recommit rather to the financial goals that you may have set for yourself in 2020 for the coming years?
Well, I think this is very, very important, and as we discussed earlier, that the pandemic impacted finances of almost everyone to a varying degree. Now, of course, wherever people had to kind of discontinue their investment process, they need to really now look at which are the goals that got impacted with this. Now, if the impact has purely been on the long-term goal of maybe retirement or maybe children education, which may still be maybe 8, 10, 15 years away, there is still time to kind of make sure that in future, as your financial situation improve, you start contributing towards that. So I won't be really so much worried about somebody's long-term goal getting impacted, because it might have got impacted for maybe around 8, 10 months, provided the finances are back in order. And if one can start continuing investing the way it was being done earlier, there will be a stage where your income will improve. You will be in a position to contribute more. And that's exactly the reason why I was saying that you need to analyze your portfolio every year. When you do that, and if you find yourself in a position that you can contribute more, you can do that and ensure that whatever gap has been created in the last 8, 10 months, that gets fulfilled. So I won't be really worried about long-term goals, and also maybe even about medium-term goals. But the problem is that if any short-term goal has got impacted, there is a possibility that one might have to kind of take money out of a long-term goal or a medium-term goal. As the financial situation improves, we need to make sure then that we start contributing towards the goal from where we took the money out. But one way to tackle the short-term, shortfall in a goal is to either kind of take out money from some other goal, which is maybe, like I said, it still has time where you can contribute more in future and kind of make good for the deficiency right now. But if somebody has done that, I would definitely recommend, as the financial situation improve, one should really go back to the drawing board and see how we can start putting additional money so that there is no shortfall for the other goals. And second, of course, like I mentioned, if you had an emergency fund, if you have utilized that, your first priority, before you even restart your investment process for longer term goal or medium term goal, the first priority has to be that you create sufficient amount for emergency reserve.
Okay, Mr. Rustagi, now if you had to, based on opportunities you see for future years, based on the economic situation currently, if you had to curate a portfolio, for the next year, for somebody maybe who's young, 30 to 40 years old, they want to invest for wealth creation, how would you curate a portfolio for him or her? What do you think are the must-haves in terms of assets in the portfolio?
Well, Nobina, when we talk about someone in the age group of 30 to 40, I think there is much more clarity in terms of goals and how much money will be required as compared to someone who is at the start of the career. Because by this, when you come to this stage of your life, maybe the people are already married, they have children, so they know exactly what they need to achieve. For example, their own retirement, their career, is at a stage where they have reasonably good idea as to how much they can keep aside. So I would say that when somebody is in that age group and when somebody wants to start, doing the financial plan, the first thing, as I mentioned earlier, has to be risk management, because by then you have a family to take care of. So you need to make sure that you're adequately insured as far as the life insurance is concerned. You have created an emergency reserve and you have health insurance in place, which covers everybody in the family. And like I said, if it's a young and a small family, one should go for a family floater. I think to begin the process with risk management. And then one should follow a goal-oriented kind of investment plan where you define your goals, medium term, short term, and long term. Assign a time horizon to each one, set a target for that, and based on assumed rate of return, work out how much you need to invest for. Of course, for that, one has to do some kind of budgeting to make sure that, okay, if I need X amount, do I have that much? If I don't have, then which are the areas, which are the goals I can compromise right now, which are the goals I need to focus more. So like I said, because in this age, in this age group, one has a much better idea in terms of what needs to be achieved, and the income level is also much higher than at the start of the career. So this is the way I think practically people in every age group should follow, but more so in this age group for the reason that I mentioned, that this is the process that everyone has to follow.
All right, great. Well, Mr. Rustagi, this was extremely comprehensive, and I'm so glad that we had this conversation, which I hope will benefit a lot of our viewers, especially the ones who may be feeling a bit discouraged, after the year that 2020 has been, to get back into prudent financial planning, getting back into the right course of wealth creation. And on that note, we'll take some questions and queries that we've received from our viewers. Remember, folks, you can always write into us on The Money Show at etnow.tv and get your questions and queries answered. We are here every day at 5 p.m. to help you do just that, whatever your questions are with respect to financial planning. So let's get on board to our questions then. First up, we have Dara Singh writing into us saying that my age is 27 and I'm in the Indian Army. Currently, my salary is roughly about 1 lakh rupees, and after deductions, government saving schemes, on hand is approximately 70,000 rupees. The savings includes AGIF deduction of 5,500 and 10,000 rupees in the DSOP fund of Army. Apart from this, I've not started investing anywhere else yet. I've recently got married and now worried about not having any flexibility in terms of savings and liquidity of money in hand. So he wants to know, where should he invest so that he's comfortable when he's retired? And also, I want to buy my own house, so please suggest how I go about it. Okay, so Dara's young, Indian Army. I'm sure the government as well will give him a lot of benefits post his retirement. But yeah, Mr. Rustagi, how do you recommend, an individual like Dara Singh start off?
Well, Mubin, as you rightly said, I think he will get a lot of benefits even post-retirement in terms of pension. And also, if you really look at his finances right now, he has a salary of around 1 lakh rupees, out of which around 15,500 roughly is going into his group insurance and also and the pension fund. Now, what he really needs to look at is which are the other goals that he needs to achieve. Like he mentioned, one about that he wants to buy a house. So clearly the process remains the same. Do some kind of budgeting and see how much money will be required for housing. And if he has children, maybe how much money will be required for their education. So these are a couple of important goals. Maybe there's some short-term goals. So he needs to really look at those goals, do some budgeting and see how much money can be kept aside for investment. That's the initial point. But one should always remember that when you set up your investment goals, you work out as to how much you will require to invest every month or at kind of periodic intervals to get to your goals. Now, then you have to move back to as to how much you can invest If there is a gap, you need to see how you can cover that gap. So maybe this can be a starting point. Look at the goals. And in terms of liquidity that he mentioned, clearly he needs to create an emergency fund, keep some money into liquid assets. It can be kept in a bank, or it can be kept in a liquid fund, or ultra short term for a mutual fund. As we always advise, at least 6 months expenses. I'm sure for someone like him, the requirement needs are going to be slightly different from someone who's not in the army, but still there can be requirement of some kind of emergency money. So create that emergency reserve and define your goals and start working out as to how much you need to invest. Look beyond, again, traditional options. Look at market-linked products. Look at hybrid funds and equity funds. Because if you have a long-term goal, normally these long-term goals have a larger targets. And for that, it's very important that your portfolio allows you to earn positive real rate of return. And that can only happen from these kind of products. So maybe this is the starting point for him. And then over a period of time, he should keep analyzing and make changes wherever required.
All right, so that of course is with respect to how you should essentially go about investing your money. Dara Singh is young, he works, he is a part of the Indian Army, so mercifully he's going to be quite set in terms of his expenses being managed post retirement. But of course Mr. Singh also does have ambitions of owning his own home. Apart from that, I'm sure he has many other ambitions as well. A crucial one at this point is of course immediate liquidity. He's just married, so I'm sure that's as well something that he wants to take care of. Okay, a very plain and simple question from Mr. G.K. Bhadri. He asks, I would like to know the performance of the HDFC mutual fund, more specifically the HDFC small cap fund. Mr. Rustagi, yesterday as well we got a question from a gentleman asking about why there's been underperformance from the HDFC pack of mutual funds. These are the funds that had done very well in the past, but now his question was about the HDFC top 100 fund. Mr. Bhadri's question is on the HDFC small cap fund. So quite a coincidence that just the next day we're getting another question on HDFC mutual fund. So I would like to ask you a more holistic question then, Mr. Rustagi. Along with the HDFC small cap fund, what do you think of the entire HDFC scheme, mutual fund scheme?
Umina, let me begin with as to what my observations are on HDFC small cap fund. Well, as I mentioned earlier, I think small cap as a segment has not been doing well for the last couple of years, but we've seen now that as the markets are improving, as the markets are becoming broad-based, and there are chances that economy will do well over the next couple of years, and the market is likely to become more broad-based. We are definitely seeing that the small cap as a segment has started doing very well. But let me tell you, if we were to analyze the performance of different small cap funds, let's say from 23rd March till now, because that's where we saw the lowest level of the market, this fund has done pretty well. The problem is, I tell you, where investors are not able to see the performance in their portfolio is because if you invested a couple of years ago, and for those couple of years, small cap as a segment was not doing very well, even if the fund is doing well now, it will take time for them to see return in their portfolio. If I were to look at the entire basket of small cap funds, I would say that HDFC small cap fund is a good quality fund. It has a very good portfolio. So my recommendation would be that if he's already invested in that, he should continue to remain invested. I expect that this fund should do well going forward. Broadly speaking, yes, I agree that some of the HDFC funds have not done well, but every fund has a different philosophy. Sometimes that philosophy works, sometimes it doesn't work for a long period, which is what I think has happened. But then when you design a portfolio, work on a portfolio, you don't want all the funds following the similar strategy. So maybe the reason for the underperformance of HDFC funds is that the investment philosophy is slightly different. The composition of the portfolio is slightly different from the peer group in each of their category. But I would say the small cap, the mid cap have been doing pretty well. Why the performance is not looking good? Because these segments have not done well. So clearly, maybe HDFC 100 that you said it's not been doing that well. But I think these two funds have been doing very well. And I believe that as the market will become broad-based, you should see some improvement in the performance.
All right. Great. So I think that's all the important lessons to understand, from from essentially when you do see certain mutual funds, certain schemes, and coincidentally they belong to a particular AMC not doing well. It's not necessary really that these schemes are bad performing ones. You have to look at it from a more holistic perspective. Maybe you could start off with from a point where Mr. Rustagi started off, and take your way from there to assess whether a particular fund or scheme is good or not. Well, okay, on that note, Mr. Rustagi, we let you go. So thank you so much for joining us today on The Money Show and, helping our viewers out as well with their questions and queries. And once again, season's greetings.